So that's the team, that's who's here today. The most important part is you. I'm sure there's going to be many questions, but we're going to try to make you as smart as we can over the next 45 to 50 minutes. As you can see there, I don't have to read it to you. Sigma came along and it was a result of overpumping in the entire state of California. The Central Valley especially has had its problems, and so the state legislature in their wisdom decided that Sustainable Groundwater Management Act should be enacted. And we've gone ahead and done everything that we have to do to date to make sure that we're compliant with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And really what we're talking about is sustainability for the King Subbasin and for McMullin. But most importantly is the last line there. It's on the local level under local determination. What we're trying to do is make sure that we stay compliant so that the folks in Sacramento can stay in Sacramento. We can do our thing down here in McMullin. I want to make sure that everybody still understands what McMullin looks like. It is the yellow area on the map, just west of Kerman and just east of the bypass, south of San Joaquin River and north of the Carruthers area. We have the unique circumstance here in McMullin of being the only 100% groundwater dependent GSA, not only in the subbasin, but generally in the entire south end of the valley. So we have a unique circumstance that hasn't bothered us so far. 91,100 acre feet of annual groundwater overdraft is not necessarily ours, but it's been assigned to us as part of the King Subbasin, because right now the King Subbasin is generally estimating what our overdraft is. And so what we're hard about today, and you'll hear it from Crystal and you're hearing this kind of theme, we need to get metered up, measured up, so we can defend what groundwater we do use and not be charged for groundwater we don't use. And so you're going to hear a really, really important program that we're working on today, and Crystal will be happy to let you know about that. All right, bottom one. There it is, you can read it. What we're trying to do is keep you folks alive, afloat, and productive and prosperous going forward. That's I call it landowner centric. You'll hear me say that phrase. That's what we are. That's what our office does. We are working every day with one purpose in mind, accomplishing Sigma, but the second purpose is to do it with your interest first and foremost. And again, the grants we've gotten, some of the programs we're running, you're going to see that we are doing everything we can to meet you halfway on anything that we ask you to do. All right, so I did mention the Groundwater Sustainability Plan. That is Lynn Groundwater Muller. I have to say it, and I can't stand it. You know, if you put a D in there, she could be Lynn Groundwater Model. I mean, it's a great name. All right, it's all yours, Lynn.
So as Matt mentioned, I helped write the McMullin Area Groundwater Sustainability Plan. To backtrack just a little bit, when Sigma was passed, one of the things that had to happen was the local agencies had to form groundwater sustainability agencies. And once MAGSA was formed, along with the other Kings Basin GSAs, the next step was to create a groundwater sustainability plan, or a GSP. So in the GSP, it's basically a roadmap of how we're going to become sustainable in 2040, knowing that over the time, as we gather more information, as we gather more data, we'll have better knowledge of what's going on in our area. And as we get more information, every 5 years, there's an update. So 2025, 2030, 2035, and 2040, we'll have GSP updates. So in these GSPs, there are 6 main categories that is discussed. First is the lowering of groundwater levels. So we're monitoring the groundwater levels within the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Also reduction of groundwater storage, seawater and treatment, but MAGSA being an inland, we don't have to worry about that one, so they only have to worry about 5, along with degraded groundwater quality, land subsidence, and interconnected surface water. A little bit on the timeline. In 2020, we submitted the first draft of the GSP, and there's no example to go off of. Everyone was in the same boat, writing a new plan. So once it was submitted, DWR had 2 years to review it. So we got our initial incomplete determination in 2022, and we had 6 months to revise our GSP and submit it for basically either it's going to be approved or it's not. So luckily we got notice in August of 2023 that it was approved. Now, even though it was approved, there's still work to do, because every GSA, every basin got a letter from DWR. Even though it was approved, there's still things we need to work on. When we initially wrote the GSP, we knew there were data gaps, and data gaps are addressed in the GSPs. So part of the comments that came back from DWR was wanting to fill some of those data gaps sooner rather than later. So before I get into the letter that we received for the approval letter, a little bit of what some of the ongoing things MAGSA is working on in the GSP. So in the GSP, there are various projects and management actions. So knowing that, MAGSA has never stopped moving. There's been several management actions that have been passed, policies in place, and those can be found on the MAGSA website. And then there's several projects that are happening. I won't talk about too much because Matt's going to talk about it later. But designing some projects and hopefully going into construction soon. And then just ongoing data collection. MAGSA is getting more surface water, but mostly groundwater dependent. And so as Matt mentioned earlier, we really want to know what's going on in the basin. So we have data to back up. It's not theoretical or estimations. We can point to meters that it's going to talk about later too, how much water is actually being pumped from MAGSA. And so part of that is refining our monitoring network, and some of the issues we've had lately is landowners need to use their water. So when we're using an active ag well, it's not always the best situation for collecting groundwater levels. And so over the next weeks, months, as soon as we can, trying to find dedicated monitoring network. So that way we don't have any issues collecting data, because DWR will say if you can't collect the data, even if the water level is above the minimum threshold, if we don't meet the quota we set in our GSP. So if 3 or more wells we don't have readings for, basically they'll say, okay, it's an undesirable result because you don't have the data to say are above the minimum threshold. So trying to tighten up our monitoring network so we don't have any issues collecting data, so we won't fall into that category. In addition to what's ongoing, every year we have to submit an annual report to the DWR. And basically that tells them how are we doing, what's the water level look like, how does that compare to the water levels we've set in our GSP? Are we on track for becoming sustainable in 2040, or are there issues that they're seeing that will need to be addressed? And so basically in the Kings Basin, the philosophy we had from the beginning is collect data first before we do anything drastic. Because we don't want to do anything drastic until we know what's going on in the basin. And so the first 5-10 years, we're really focused on collecting data. So every year we submit an annual report to DWR to show them that we are collecting that data and how we're doing. It's a progress report, if you will. And then every 5 years, we have to submit an update. So the next one is going to be due in about a year. Not much time to get it done, but part of the update is addressing the comments that DWR had in the approved letter. So the approval letter can be found on the Sigma portal that DWR has. And out of it, there were really 3 main projects that we need to focus on. One is the confined aquifer. We have the porphyrin clay in MAGSA, and so we have the unconfined above the porphyrin clay and the confined aquifer below the porphyrin clay. Big data gap that we said from the beginning that we would fill in the next 10 years or so, and they really want it filled sooner. So trying to identify what wells are confined or composite, because some are drilled above and below the porphyrin clay. And then incorporate that into our water budget. So we know how much water is coming in, how much water is coming out of both the unconfined and confined aquifer. And then we have the interconnected surface water data gap study. So trying to figure out what's going on along the San Joaquin River to the north, if pumping along the river is impacting or not. There's been previous studies that say it's not connected, but got to dig a little deeper into that and have data to back it up. So MAGSA already been having meetings with the appropriate parties and neighboring basins to discuss that effort. And then there's also the domestic well mitigation program. And so part of it was, since we're setting water levels below 2015 water levels, there's going to be an impact on domestic well users. And so they want to minimize that impact. So we're working on that study on how to best address that. So with that, I'll hand it over to Matt, who will talk about two of the key projects that we're working on.
All right, most of you are aware probably by now, if not, I'll be introducing you to what is the Terra Nova project down along the Kings River at 145 where it crosses the James bypass. Don Cameron on his property has been working since 2012 on a diversion project. 2012 puts him well before Sigma, and he immediately recognized that he was right next to the bypass and there was flood water going by him regularly, and it made no sense that he wasn't trying to take some of that surplus flood water and put onto his land. And so he began to do testing on his property on his own time, his own money, and he started to flood his vineyards. He started to flood his orchards when they were dormant. Everybody told him he was crazy, that was, you're gonna kill your plants. Lo and behold, Don, since that time has really kind of come to be known as the godfather of Floodmar, which is flood managed aquifer recharge. He was successful. He found out what his plants could tolerate. He put a lot of water into the ground even before Sigma. But this last year, 2023, was actually his first full year where he had all of his improvements in place. Right now, if you drive by on McMullin Area, you'll see a white pump out there. It looks like a SpaceX launch station, but that's his one pump that he was able to put in on a grant that he received from DWR in conjunction with Kings River Conservation District. And they put together the Terra Nova flood and recharge project. They were able to this year, and actually McMullin was able to help. We put 18,000 acre-feet of recharge into the ground this year. That's really the first successful concerted effort since Sigma of water going back into the ground from McMullin. And from my point of view, it's the first of many, many acre-feet of water going back into the ground. So the first thing we're looking at is to take Don's great idea, Kings River Conservation District's great efforts, and take them and expand them to the east. If you take you'll probably be up here, but if you take a look on those maps over there, you can kind of see the general direction where we're going. On that right-hand map, you'll see kind of the coral area. Some people call it pink, I call it coral. Look over there, that's the Raisin City area, and in that area, we've had tests that show us that we can put 1.5 to 2 feet of water per day into the ground. And so that's what we're targeting. We're trying to move that water to the east as part of the expansion project, we call it, or the McMullin expansion project. We hope to have that construction commencing very soon, because Lynn has been very active in that as well, and we are now all the way through to construction drawings being completed, and we're awaiting final approval from the Natural Resources Conservation Service of our plans. Why are we asking Natural Resources Conservation Service? Because Raisin City was successful several years ago in getting a NRCS grant to work on this project, and the other half of the project is regulated by the state, which we already have our rules for. And the reason we have the state involvement is because we were successful in acquiring a $10 million grant to build the canals for this particular expansion project. So approximately $17 million of the project, it's more than that, but 17 million of the project is grant money that we're hoping to put into play, along with some fairly heavy equipment, and building those canals out during this fiscal year to calendar year. Hopefully we get most of it done by the summer if we get a good flow. That will give us a huge lift. We put those other 3 pumps on Don's arrangement there at his pump station. We will be able to increase the total capacity, daily capacity, almost 1,200 acre-feet a day that we can recharge into the ground. Figure that over about 100 to 150 day flood time during most flood years, and that turns out to be a whole lot of water back into the ground. That also envisions landowners along the conveyance to be cooperative in spreading that water out onto their lands, increasing the 700 acres or so that Don was able to put 18,000 acre-feet on into about a 20,000 acre-foot possibility for recharge, for on-park recharge. But the big doggy is the water bank. If you have not heard about Aquaterra so far, you need to go on the website and learn as much as you can. What we've determined in McMullin, and this is taking back again, a step back. You know, we talked about McMullin being the only GSA in the subbasin that doesn't have any surface water. But at the same time, we've been asked to retire 91,100 acre feet on the annual average, which is 75% of the total for the entire King subbase. Now, on first glance, that would be, why would you give the GSA that has no surface water the obligation to retire 3/4 of the overdraft in the subbase? Well, you have two choices, either get more water or you cut back. You know, manager not to be named, early on PBS came on TV right after Sigma was passed and taken it away and balance up King subbase and just simply had McMullin retire half of its life. Great idea. Whether each one of you like to take half of your acreage, and just. Well, it's a simple solution, but it's not. So we said, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna go on demand reduction. We're not gonna give anybody an allocation. As you notice, you've not heard anything from me or from McMullin telling you how much water you can pump. We're presuming that you're going to continue to use your good sense and your efficiencies to use as little as possible, but not to be wasteful. And so we're building our project on that concept. So where do we turn? We turn to how do we get more water resources into McMullin? Did a few tests, found out that below McMullin, because the subsidence has been almost non-existent, very small subsidence, over the last 100 years, that we have essentially, if you can imagine the B of A, branch down the corner, if they empty out their vault, they still have a vault. It's an empty vault. So what do we have underneath McMullin? We have an empty vault. In 1920, water was coming through the surface through artesian pressures and was actually bubbling out at the surface. That's how full our vault is able to hold water. Right now, it's substantially reduced. And so some might say, well, that's bad. You drew down the water. Now we're having to pay high PG&E bills because the water's so low. But at the same time, what we've created, glass half full, is a vault half full. So we've designed a system that will allow for input of water by outside partners, state and federal water contractors, perhaps Westlands, Metropolitan, Valley Water, East Bay, folks that have contracts in the state and federal projects that are faced with possible losses due to spillage and have access to Article 21 or 215, or they have no place to park. We've designed it with the idea that we'll sell to them the first 800,000 acre feet of priority, the right at $750 an acre foot for perpetuity to have the priority right to put water in and take water out. All right, so if you look at this map, this is what our general design is for our water bank. We'll be taking water off of the Mendota pool and bringing that water into the central part of the district and then distributing it on those colorful canals, each of which is tied to the other canals into a double circular distribution system, which will allow us to bring water in and put it into the ground in the entirety of McMullin. There is approximately 2 million acre feet, very conservatively, of space below McMullin to store that water. We're only offering 800,000 acre feet to our partners. On their payment for their priority rights to store water here, we will be able to build the entire conveyance project at no cost to our landowners. I do hope that rings a bell in this room. It is our intention to get this thing built by those priority partners and have McMullin own the infrastructure and be able to use it at all times when we're not having to use it to satisfy their needs, which is about, 2/3 of the time. So why is this good for retiring groundwater? Well, on their leave behind, we call it leave behind, and for every 100,000 acre feet that they bring into McMullin, they leave behind 10%. So 80,000 acre feet that comes in of the 800,000 stays in McMullin. Well, that's a little bit, that's not enough. But I told you we could hold perhaps conservatively 2 million acre feet. The next tranche will be 500,000 acre feet, and that will be 4 for 3. So those folks will not have to pay the 750. They'll be junior, but they'll put water in and they'll get back 3 acre feet for before they put in 25% viewpoint. That's starting to be some good water. Then the last tranche will be a 2 for 1, which means that for every 2 acre feet that comes in, 1 stays in McMullin, 1 goes back. Those numbers on that conservative approach will still give us, we think, approximately 1 million acre feet to store for the benefit of the McMullin landowners, and it will retire 3/4, if not all, of the overdraft for the entire King subbase on completion. So we have a plan. Situation's not dire. We don't have to do any type of restrictions yet. We're not talking about giving you allocations or penalizing you or causing you to have to, quit pumping or fallow land or anything else. That's not on our radar at the moment, and I'm very happy to report that to you. Now, that's all great, and it'll be good if we can build it, and we're working every day to get it built. But in the meantime, we have a few administrative and measurement and engineering type things that we need to get done. And I believe the next step would be Chris to talk about that. And you're gonna ask questions about this later, so, oh, there you go. That's what we're gonna do this year, but the most important thing we're gonna do is that.
As Matt has said, everything we're doing and we're working on is getting our groundwater sustainable by 2040. And meters are key to accomplishing that goal. Meters give us an accurate number of what we're talking in MAGSA. Right now, we're given an estimate. We're assigned an estimate. This is the number you have to, you're responsible for. This is your overdraft number. Well, estimates can be plus or minus. And depending on which way it goes, that can be a detriment to MAGSA landowners. So we want a tight number. We want an accurate number that we're working toward. Meters also help us move forward those supply side projects that Matt was just talking about. Aquaterra, McMullin expansion, also a groundwater marketing program that Matt is going to talk about a little bit here in a little bit. And meters give you a tool to help you with your irrigation efficiency practices. As a reminder, our deadline for meter installation is January 31st, 2025. So I know there's a lot to do between now and then, and also farming practices will be coming into play soon. So as soon as you can, get going on this. Well, I will also add, if you have a well that is connected to a home, it's residential use, that at this time is not required to have a meter. So we have three priorities when we have started this meter and telemetry program. We understand that this is a financial burden to our landowners. Our goal was to be able to reduce that cost to you. And you say third time's the charm, but for Matt Hurley, general manager, fourth time was the charm. He took 4 times to get that application in so that we could get this rebate back programs to you, the landowner. We also want to make sure, because it is a grant, and always with grants, you have requirements. But we wanted to streamline the process as best as possible and make sure that you have clear communications. We're also accessible for you. We want to be able to answer any of your questions. You can call us, email us, come by the office. Another important part of this is that your data is secure. That's been a big priority for MAGSA. So we've been working for over 2 years with Sigma Analytics. We contracted with them to set up a secure database. And that information is private. We won't even see that. We'll just get an aggregate number that we have to report to the state. So there are actually 2 funding sources. We're not going to talk about EQIP today. We're in our 3rd year of that. I'm just going to quickly go over the $2.8 million grant that we got. One thing you should note about these grants, they are both federal grants. So the federal government doesn't allow us to double dip. At least they don't let us double dip. And so we can't, if you get EQIP funding, you cannot get funding through the rebate program. It's one or the other, but they're pretty similar on what you're going to get back. So we launched this program here in January. And what it is it's approximately a 40% rebate on your meter purchase and installation, your purchase and installation of telemetry, and a 1-year subscription for monitoring. We have 6 steps we've actually come up with to try to help you go through this process. For the landowner, you really want to pay attention to steps 1, 3, and 4. So step 1, you're going to contact your irrigation company. We have in our communications, we have 6 that we identified that we have talked to and worked with. You do not have to use those 6, but those 6 are familiar with our regulations, and they also have agreed to give a MAGSA discount. So that MAGSA discount is above the rebate. It's MAGSA discount and the rebate. So once you work with them, they'll get the telemetry or the meters installed, and then they'll send back to us a verification form. We'll use that form, we'll go out in the field, we'll verify that everything's correct. And then we will have you send us, when you receive them, your paid invoice showing us that you purchased and installed the meter. We'll then connect you with our telemetry company, SWA, Sigma Analytics, and they will work with you on getting your telemetry installed and also getting a contract, 1-year contract for monitoring. And then they'll send us those invoices, and once we receive all that, we will process your rebate. We're gonna send the rebate to the landowner based on the APN that we have, that's associated with the APN number. And as I said, we want to be accessible, we want to answer your questions, we can help you all the way through the process if you need it, so please feel free to contact us. Drop by the office, it's 8 to 5, but sometimes because it's a two-man show, maybe that office will put a note on and say we're out in a meeting, but so you might want to call before you drop by, but otherwise, we'd love to see you, we'd love to have you call us or email us. Now, I'm gonna have Matt talk about some other priorities, our groundwater marketing program.
First up, about a year ago, we completed an analysis, a report as part of the federal grant as well as Water Smart grant that did a determination as to whether or not it appeared that the ingredients necessary to conduct a water market within McMullin's boundary was present and available. Their determination was not only yes, but a resounding yes. We have very few limitations that would constrict us, some in the north versus some in the south, but very few. And we do believe that we can set up a system, either what we call a Craigslist system or a more institutional system that will allow us to, or allow you, once you get to a certain point in your water year, to be able to determine if you're short or you're long. And if you're long, you'll be able to put the surplus water up for purchase by other landowners. And if you're short, obviously, you go on that looking for the ability to finish your irrigation for that particular season, for that particular year. So, yes, I have a report. It's beautiful. It sits right up on my shelf, and it tells us that we can do that if we want to. But what we're doing right now is we're receiving bids on the actual implementation. So we have some folks who have about 20+ years in groundwater management, in water markets, and the engineering necessary to make it all happen, who we're in the process of bidding with right now, coming to a contract with, and we expect that in addition to everything else we're talking to you about what's happening this year, we'll be having some public meetings on inputs on your preferences relative to what methodology works the best, which rules are important to put into the water marketing program, and how it might be connected. What we envision in the main office here on staff is that this water marketing program will dovetail nicely with the data management system that we've created that's managing your data. And so we expect that platform probably to be maintained and monitored by the same company who's keeping track of your daily inputs to the system. That will allow you to get current real-time data and allow for your offer to include verified quantities. Again, what's missing in a water marketing program? What are the two things that you just have to have in order for one to work? One, you have to have a meter. The only way you can determine what you've used and what you have left is by a meter. And so that's the data that's going into the data management system. The other thing is an allocation. I told you before, we're not talking allocation yet. So probably what we'll look at for our marketing program initially is some sort of voluntary allocation program. We'll test out not only the process, but we'll also test out the numbers, and you'll kind of see how it looks for you as compared to whatever mythical number we decide on for your allocation. So we expect to have that for a little bit of fun going forward for this year as well, as we get a contract on.
Finally, just want to mention, we have a lot of events planned this year, educational events for you, the landowner. There's going to be workshops, webinars, videos, and these will be associated with our on-farm recharge university, and also a grant we got through Fresno State with Center for Irrigation Technology. So we'll be working with them. We'll do some site visits even. So please look for those as we send out emails and notices, and we look forward to having you be part of that this year. And then one other thing I just want you to be aware of, that we do advocate for you at the state level. Since Sigma Biz has been implemented in 2014, there's been a lot of legislation introduced, and a lot of that could be detrimental to us being able to locally manage groundwater sustainability. So we do keep an eye on legislation, and if necessary, we'll go out, we'll contact our local legislators, we'll tell them, our positions on certain bills to make sure that those bills come out into the best outcome for our landowners. And that is also, Ashley is now going to talk about the Q&A, how that's going to go.
All right, well, before we dive into Q&A, be sure to pay attention to our contact information. The best place to stay updated on everything we just talked about is our website, McMullinArea.org. But of course, I have to plug our social medias. Follow us on LinkedIn and on Twitter and YouTube, where we share updates as well. And so this is gonna be fun, and bear with us as we try to get through as many questions as possible. So let's start with an in-person question.
Well, thanks for the great presentation. So I'm a farmer in McMullin area, and I also represent a non-profit organization called PUG, which has about 350,000 acres in California. So we go meet with all the different sub-basin fiascos in this. So the question is, just want to reconfirm, is McMullin SG Sigma approved? And the second thing is, since where are the levels of those aquifers? Are we, how much room do we have to play with? Are they low? Are they high? So is the allocations gonna come in this season, let's say if we get a hot weather? Or is it going to, we got a certain buffer that we're playing?
Well, you get your money's worth when you ask that question. A lot of commas in there. Well, first of all, I'm glad that you mentioned your group. Believe it or not, in addition to the things we've talked about, we're also affiliated with Tranquility Resource Conservation District. And the executive director of that district has spent a lot of time in association with your group, and we're very aware of your group, and I'm certainly glad that you're here not only on your own behalf, but your group as well. Second question was, did we pass our audition with the Department of Water Resources? Yes, we did. Not only McMullin, but the Kings service area, the Kings River area, Kings River Subbasin. Just so everybody's sure about this, we are one of 7 in the Kings River Subbasin, and we have a coordination agreement with the other 6. We all live or die as a subbasin, not as a GSA. So the good thing about what's happened is that not only has McMullin, but also James and Kings River North, Kings River East, Kings River Central, North Fork Kings, who did I forget? South, Kings River South. I think I got us all 7 of us as a coordinated, collaborating group got ourselves approved. We, along with Westlands, which is the West Side Subbasin, were the original 2 out of the southern 6. We're happy to welcome Madera County, Madera GSA into that category. Just recently, they got notified that they also were approved. So we're working kind of in a good space. Just as an aside, the 4 subbasins to our south are facing some pretty harsh times ahead. And we just, knock on wood, we are going to continue to be in good stead as long as we do, as Lynn said, we take care of our interconnected streams and properly document that, take care of our wells going dry, our well mitigation program, and of course, don't allow for subsidence. Subsidence could very well be the sneakiest thing involved in Sigma, because the state takes a basic no subsidence position. So if subsidence continues to be exacerbated, that one item could kill farming in the state of California if we're not careful. So there's some hotspot areas, Corcoran being one, Highway 152 being another. But the last part of your question was, how are we doing? Lynn talked about minimum thresholds. There is a slope, a glide slope that we're following as we start to mitigate these things and level it out. We are not anywhere near our minimum thresholds now. We're very close to some of our interim milestones that we're trying to set up for ourselves as we find our way into that balance situation. But we look good at this point. And if you read our plan, this is the one I keep repeating to everybody, write it down. Our plan says that we do not expect in the King Subbasin to be looking at any type of mandatory allocation for groundwater before 2030. That's the magic date at this point. If we do everything right in the meantime, if we get our water bank going and get water into the ground, perhaps the concept of allocations will never rear its ugly head in King Subbasin. That's the thing. Anybody else?
Yeah, we have someone online.
Online?
An anonymous attendee asks, I'm curious as to what makes and models of flow meters will be used or required for the rebate program. And the second part of the question is about SWA. Where can this person find information about Sigma Water Analytics? Who is the main contact at the company that will be handling all my pumping data?
We have not specified per se makes and models. There's sort of a default towards that the federal government has kind of participated in. We require on our policy, it's available on the website for metering, monitoring, and well construction, requires that the meter be an electromagnetic meter and have a maximum variability of 2%. Generally speaking, most of the bolt-on meters, the permanent meters are 1% accuracy, and some of the saddle meters can be tuned down to 2% accuracy. The models, the makes on that are varied, but again, the limitations that come from the government. Our grant this time around included the bipartisan infrastructure act requirements that the 55% of the parts within the actual meters and telemetry be built in America and Buy America, Build America, BABA, has to be BABA compliant. We do have letters on file from Micrometer and from C-Metrics and from our telemetry supplier that verify that the units that they have specified for McMullin will in fact qualify for those. Those 6 irrigation suppliers that we referred you to are all aware of that and are standing by to give you additional information on which meter may be best for your configuration. The one thing I do want to tell you, it's possibly bad news, but some of you, I'd say 90%, so you're all in a good group here. Some of you have wells that look like some of my staff calls a spider, I call it an octopus. It's got a lot of pipe going every direction. And one of the requirements of the federal government in our grant program is that the meter be the first installed installed piece of equipment on your piping after the discharge. So some of you have backflow prevention, some of you have fill turnout, some of you have other valves going to other fields. The hard part here for you may be squeezing it in and getting it in right there as the first in order after the discharge. So that's on you. We can't possibly come up with enough funds to help do that. So do whatever you can in conjunction with your suppliers to get that done. What we're looking for when we do a final inspection after they notify us it's compliant with the manufacturer's specifications and it's installed correctly, is that we're looking at your first in order after the discharge. Once that occurs, then we'll hook you up with the telemetry and you're on from there. But I think that's the answer to that. What was the second one?
SWA.
Oh, SWA. Sigma Water Analytics is a company that McMullin contracted with about 2 years ago now to assist in the development of our data management program. Our budget has included dollars to do that process. One of the things that we asked SWA to do was to develop a generally secure data management system that will not allow your data to be hacked. We have some crypto specialists, and we've designed the system with their assistance and some software designers to make the system be basically bank level, Citibank, whatever it is, bank level security. So you will have the same security on our data system as you would on your handheld devices looking at what your bank accounts look like. So that's what we have for you. They will have available for you handheld connections to your water as it's being drawn down, what your meters are putting out. They'll have other tools that are associated with that. And we will get from them our required reporting requirements, which are to report to the state of California on an annual basis the gross extractions from McMullin. And we are not going to attribute it back to any one of your locations. We're simply going to total it and send it in. That's it's really important to us. It's been important to us from the very beginning. Every policy that we've adopted in McMullin has been towards the maintaining of the confidentiality of your well and your well production. And to the extent allowable under the law, SWA and McMullin together will be working to make sure that happens. Hope that answered the question.
I did want to add about contact information for Sigma Water Analytics. That's included in your rebate program packet that hopefully everybody received in the mail. And by the end of the month, all MAGSA growers should have received that and will also be directed in that packet to a webpage that has all of this information as well. So you'll be able to find that contact information. Is that right, Crystal? All right. Do we have another in-person question?
Yeah, for the funding, so if you receive funding for equip, that makes you no longer eligible for this, meter program. And is that for entity, for farm bill?
That's a definite maybe. Let me tell you about EQIP. EQIP, that's run through the NRCS, which is the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Their local offices here through the FSA and so forth. And so what we have is $1 million a year that we were able to get in a water program. It's actually a combined Water Smart and NRCS program. We were successful in getting 5 years of $1 million a year for McMullin owners only to install and contract with the NRCS for their programs. One of the recommended suggested best management practices from the NRCS is to install for water efficiency purposes an electromagnetic meter, telemetry, and get a 1-year subscription for the monitoring. They're modeled basically against each other. Now, if you got that particular practice on a contract, that means that they're going to send you a check for their designated amount. I think for a 10-inch discharge this year, it was close to $4,000 that they would send you as a compensation from the EQIP program. And they don't have specific requirements that we do because we have a Water Smart grant that's a little more detailed. But if in fact you do complete that practice in its entirety, you would not be eligible for this program unless it was a different well. If you have 5 wells and you do 2 on EQIP and 3 on this program, that's okay. You just can't double down on a individual program on one well. So, and then also by parts, if some folks went through and got meters only from EQIP, and then the telemetry and the 1 year of subscription, because it wasn't included in EQIP, would be available to apply for the Bureau grant. So you're not limited on either one of them, but the pieces will still be available. That's another important point. Maybe Crystal doesn't mind me saying so. We did have a start date of the award contract signing, which was, I think, in late November is when we started. So anybody who installed an electromagnetic meter prior to November will not be eligible for the rebate for the meter. They still will be eligible for the rebate for the telemetry and for the monitoring and all the installation associated with it. So there are some fine line details that give our office a call and we'll be able to clarify.
Okay, we have a few questions I might be able to combine. What type of communication with the flow meter itself will SWA be using? Pulse output from the meter or Modbus comms? Who's in charge of making sure this communication link up is working correctly? The irrigation contractor SWA? And then also, will we be required to continue the subscription after the first year expires?
So I'm going to the weeds here just a little bit. The meters, once again, need to be, per our regulations in McMullin, need to be telemetry capable. And because of the latest regulation update, because the telemetry is required, we've asked the manufacturers, specifically Micrometer and C-Metrics in this particular instance, to make sure that when McMullin orders come in, that they actually get configured so that they can be compliant and be connected to the telemetry. The telemetry is it's a little, it looks like a diesel oil filter. And it's got a fairly short cable that plugs into the meter. Both of those Pulse and Modbus are available. When you order a micrometer meter, for example, like I said before, they actually have a SKU now, a McMullin SKU that they know they'll equip it that way. We have been out in the field, believe it or not, McMullin, we have a guy, Gary, who you'll see driving around a big Dodge truck until we tell him it's pretty atmospheric, so he'll probably be driving a smaller truck pretty soon. But he's out there. Every registered well that we have on file in McMullin, he has a picture. He's been to every single well within McMullin. He has over 1,200 contacts with wells in McMullin. And for those of you who didn't register, he's fully aware of wells being out there that aren't registered as well. So we're gonna encourage you to continue to catch up on the registration. But we have a lot of wells in McMullin. We want every single one of those production wells to be metered up as soon as possible. And so he's very familiar with what meters are out there already on some of your wells. A lot of them are the least expensive version that has no telemetry capability. So that's another thing that needs to be addressed as you're in the field with your irrigation supplier, making sure that your meter is completely compliant and able to receive the connections from our telemetry. And there's actually two forms of telemetry. One we're using is a Ranger unit that's put out by Signal Fire, which is a Massachusetts company. They do a lot of work with Symmetrics. The other one is the Smart Track system that we're trying to verify from Micrometer that they're putting out, which is a similar product, which is competitive with the Ranger. So both of those are set up. It's an intranet. It doesn't go on to the cloud. I believe, I'm probably the most ardent opposition to the cloud. The cloud is a communications platform. It's not set up to communicate data if you want to keep it secure. So we've developed an internet platform that's not using the cloud. It's a satellite-based system that's encrypted. We put our own cards into the communication system. They report directly to the servers in the state of Washington, where SWA is keeping the servers. It's an Indian country. I don't think you can get any more secure than that. If somebody really wants to push for our data, they're gonna have to go through a whole lot of practical and legal firewalls to get to it. It will be sitting on a reservation in the state of Washington and be connected directly from your well to the meter, to the server. So it's about as tight as we can get for a public agency, that's for sure.
Will you be required to continue the subscription after the first year?
Will we be required to do anything? If you've noticed it in the letter and everything else, we haven't required you to do anything. We've made available to you a $2.8 million grant that will allow you to reduce your costs. We haven't told you you had to buy something. We've told you you need to be metered up, but we haven't told you which model or whatever. What we have provided for you, what we think we provided for you, is a really, really efficient way of doing this. Least expensive, most efficient, best way to manage. If you want to be part of the marketing going forward, most likely SWA will be the marketing platform. If you're not reporting to the marketing platform, you can slow yourself down in getting your data recognized. You'll probably pay double because you're going to need to get your data into our system anyway. So if you go with another provider, it's probably going to have to be sent from that provider and have to be vetted. So we make sure that it's good. So the answer to the question, we won't require it, but I think you're going to find that it makes a perfect amount of sense that once this thing has been put in place, that you set it and forget it because it's going to be there. You're going to get constant communications from SWA about your production. I think you're going to like what they have to offer for you. Proof's in the pudding, we'll find out that, but we'll make a change if we have to, but we believe that staying with a very tight MAGSA system is the way to go. Stick together, save the most money. The other thing we have is Colin. Colin's here right here. He's with a company called Irrigation for the Future, and part of our grant was that once we get this data coming in from the telemetry and so forth, Colin works on an algorithm that his father, who was a former professor at Oregon State University, has been developing for 20 years, and they've come up with a real efficient way to irrigate. Colin will be available for those of you who wish to have some inputs on how to, at what time, for how long, and those kind of things. And of course, the meters required for that. And the ultimate output on that is the deliverable under our grant, which is it's a water and energy efficiency grant. What we're hoping to do is reduce the cost of your energy and your water at the end product, and Colin will help us do that.
Matt, I have two questions in the state. First of all, the Aquaterra program, the governor's infrastructure package that was passed here this year, willing to streamline some of the CEQA requirements. When do you anticipate that will be fully running? That's my first question.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm really happy to tell you that it's a good question. It's a timely question. We completed all of our CEQA on the expansion project. We're waiting for the final approval on the NEPA side of the expansion project. It's all been submitted. We're just waiting for approvals. On the Aquaterra project, we originally had a combined CEQA NEPA document we were working on. Right now, the federal government has a real focus on cultural resources, mainly the tribes. And so we've spent the last year going through, we actually had folks come out and walk a 50-foot wide path with 26 people from all over the country to do a physical inspection of every mile of our conveyances and our recharge facilities and everything else to determine if there were any cultural evidences of tribes being here. We found some. We're gonna do 10 trenches, 10 feet deep in the next couple of months. Once we've verified that there's no major cultural presence here, then once that's done, our NEPA should be complete. Our CEQA is within days of being submitted to the clearinghouse for it's 30 days of exposure. And after that, we expect to certify it. We found no major environmental concerns there. Their cultural resources side has said, look, as you're going along, if you're, encounter a body or encounter an area that's right with cultural resources, to please stop and notify us, and we've agreed to that. So we have a really, really, really thorough, same company since 2012, helping Dawn all the way through the complete review of the entirety of McMullin. We know pretty much everything there is to know about the environmental conditions in McMullin. We expect to have a certified environmental document very soon. Lynn knows, and I've been telling her, hold your horses. She wants to design. I want to design. But I said, look, folks, if anything we've learned in California about CEQA is that you don't get ahead of yourself or you pay dearly in time because you don't seem sincere. I told her, we're going to find out everything there is to know about the environment and its effects on this by this project before we move forward, so that we can include design, which takes into account the environment. So we're very close. The answer to your question about when it's going to be done, if we can get those partners signed up, which we haven't been able to do pending CEQA either, get them signed up and get this thing going. We hope to be under construction. Expansion project is actually a small piece of the water bank, so technically we'll be under construction as soon as we start that. But I hope to have at least 5 engineering contractors working at the same time to construct over 80 miles of canals, 90 recovery wells, 26 lift stations, and some major conveyances off the McMullin pool. Have that going full tilt within the next 18 to 24 months. So hopefully we'll be able to take puts, which are deposits into our water bank, as early as 2026 or 2027, and then the ability to deliver it back because of the fact that 90 wells takes a long time to drill. Hopefully be in sometime in the 27, 28, 29 category. So if everything works according to plan, we're going to be done in 5 years.
The second question for you.
Yep.
Within the sub-basin, do we have, and your coordination agreement with the other GSAs, do we have any kind of agreement to utilize their advanced systems to tap into MAGSA in the future? Consideration if we can access state water. Has there been any progress in that?
Yes. It's not Sigma specific, right? So that's not Sigma specific.
Not specific signal,
Right.
be able to utilize our resources, water.
Well,
Other than flood water from all the gates.
what I can control about that, I've done. If you look at that basic design that we've come up with, we've made sure that there's a north-south canal which goes along and basically touches our eastern boundary all the way across, so that in the event that we're able to reach agreements with FID or Consolidated, that canal is standing by and ready. The distance between the ends of their canals and that canal in McMullin is less than a mile in almost every circumstance. So practically, we've prepared. We've looked at the San Joaquin River, we looked at the Kings River. We don't have specific abilities to get involved in those because we have water rights, deficiencies at this point. We've made an application for a water right. It's pending. The fully appropriated stream status is being reviewed, and we are a part of that fully appropriated stream status. In fact, next week they're having finally, for the first time in a couple of years, a return to a status conference on the fully appropriated stream status for the Kings River. We're likely to be involved in the San Joaquin River at some point because that's what we have to do for our McMullin landowners. We have to get additional water in here. I do believe with the facilities we've designed and the opportunities that we're going to present equally to our partners in the sub-basin as much as anybody around us, that in the final result, we're all going to be working together and we're going to be a real comfortable hub of fantastic water management for about the entire 100-mile circle. I've indicated to people on a regular basis that it's my hope that with McMullin injected into the process and operating as a water bank, nobody within the 100-mile circle should be faced with less than a 50% water allocation in any given water year, including. That's my story and I'm sticking to it.
That answered my question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, I would just say, I will recommend this group here today. We've all seen a degradation of land valuations and compared to other parts within the sub-basin, probably 50% value in land degradation based off of perception of unavailable water. Your two programs, or these programs you're putting together, will solidify the confidence within the lending institutions that will come back into the MAGSA basin and give us, I'll say, competitive terms to equalize out that land valuation differentiation that we see. So what you're putting together here is good. So I'll tell the group this. Having to put meters on our wells honestly feels like we've been criminalized, and we're putting an ankle bracelet on us. And someday you're gonna put the heavy hammer down. But in reality, at the state level, there were 4 water rights bills that were introduced this year. The 3 of them ended up getting stopped. 1 got through that was heavily amended. But my point is, within the powers that be politically, the social justice, the environmental justice communities within our state would love to see SIGNA reduce to nothing and the state water board take full control of everything. So it may feel like we are being penalized for being growers out here, but the reality is with the program you're putting together is going to allow us the ability to put documentation, data together to prove our point that we are going to reach a point of being sustainable within the MAGSA and the Kings Basin. So I just encourage everyone to cooperate with this, because I haven't heard any punitive damage to not being part of it yet, and we haven't wanted to go down that direction, but I encourage everyone to join in and cooperate in this effort, maintain the sustainability of the MAGSA sub-basin here.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. I didn't have to say it. I'm glad you did, but that's where we're going. Quite honestly, what we think about meters is it's the best defense. Because right now, we're effectively being charged a little over 4 acre-feet per acre for water use in McMullin. And I guarantee you, there's not a person in this room who's using 4 acre-feet of water on their land. Most of you are, I call it the PG&E allocation. Most of you look at your PG&E bill and you run it until mama says turn it off. And that's usually 3.2 to 3.5 acre-feet per acre. So right there, right off the bat, we're talking over 3/4 of an acre foot per acre across 120,000 acres in McMullin. That equals what, 90,000 acre feet. That happens to be our magic number. So if we can get a handle on our number and we can defend our number, James and us will be the only ones that are fully metered. We'll be able to defend ourselves, and the rest of the sub-basin is going to have to make a few adjustments if in fact we find out that the numbers are still there, because we're going to know exactly what we're using and we're going to defend ourselves to the end. That's for sure. Thank you for bringing that up. Any others?
We do have a couple questions here. What is MAGSA's sustainable yield?
Right now, the sustainable yield has not been verified and solidified yet for the very reasons we're talking about. To be honest with you, right now, the basin is using a gross estimate. So what we do is kind of back into these things. We take the total amount of surface water being used, et cetera, and we come up with a very, very loose, I call it loose because obviously it affects us the most, very loose estimate about what the groundwater available is. There's also some categories of groundwater and other subbasins that perhaps we won't use here. So there's no number currently in McMullin. The reason there's no numbers, we have no allocations. Once we allocate within the subbasin, we probably will allocate across the entire subbasin. It'll be very difficult to allocate for one GSA and not the other. We have early discussions about that, but I'm holding tight to my belief that it's going to be at least 2030 before this subbasin looks at allocations, and that's when you'll know what your real sustainable yield is. Sustainable yield, call it what you want. You want to know how much water you can use. That's the answer. We'll get it sometime between now and 2030, and it'll be determined a lot by how successful we are out here in getting our projects.
A representative from the Punjabi American Growers Group online asked about what the short-term water issues will be for growers in the area. You already addressed water allocation, fines, penalties, but do you want to speak any more into that?
Well, the way that water bank works, I didn't really talk about it. That water bank is going to be put in, and all those major canals are going to run 300 to 500 cubic feet per second of flow. That's a big canal, and that's a lot of water. And so that makes it very difficult to deliver it anybody other than those who are right along the canal. So the next phase of that we haven't even talked about yet is to make a retail delivery. It's still our goal, and we're all done with this, and Wynn's already begun to work on that design, is to have water delivered to the northeast corner of every single parcel within McMullin. That means 10 acres, that means 50 acres, that means 500 acres. That will allow for what we were just talking about. That will allow for when this water's coming in, that we can make in lieu use of it. We can use the surface water in lieu of groundwater, keep that groundwater in the ground and allow you to have two sources of water. So you can get that lending quotient popped up. Just so you know, I didn't say it, but I've met with several lending committees already and given them presentations about McMullin's plans. Rough and dirty, the appraisers around here are estimating 2x. Is what will happen. Your property will double that minimum in value if we complete this project.
Do we have storage available right now? Are they draining the Tulare Lake and how are they draining it? Are we able to capture that water and store it?
They are not draining the Tulare Lake at this point, at least draining it the way they did in the 90s. In the 90s, they actually pumped it out and sent it back through the bypass. That particular option has not been exercised this time around. I think they've moved it around in the lake bottom. In my prior life, I was a water manager in the lake bottom, and so I do know that they're moving it around to some places where they can park it. There's still a lot of it down there, and they're crossing their fingers that they don't get any more this year. But to answer your question, yes, conservative analysis underneath McMullin is that we can handle 2 million acre feet. We think it's closer to 3 million acre feet in final analysis. And so we have plenty of storage and plenty of ways of getting it into the ground. We're going to have about 4,000 dedicated acres of surface infiltration, but we have the place to put it. We have that empty vault. We're going to fill it up to the extent that we can and use that subsurface storage, which in my opinion is a whole lot easier to manage than the rim dams and the surface storage because we have virtually no evaporation. It's really, really important. We get the maximum benefit out of our storage. So we have a lot of storage in McMullin. It turned out that location, McMullin is sitting in a perfect spot. We even use a hashtag deep end because if you can imagine a swimming pool in the King Subbasin, we're the deep end. To the east of us is the shallow. And as everybody knows, when you put the hose in the shallow end of the swimming pool, which is the first part that fills up? The deep end. So we're hoping.
How long do you think that surface water?
Well, there you go. You asked that question and it's a sort of, that depends. There are certain areas in McMullin, like I say, that infiltrate from the surface into the ground at the rate of 1.5 to 2 feet a day. There are other places where it takes about 2 inches a day. And so what we've identified, most of it's along the maps up there is the coral area on there. Those areas are the best infiltration areas. And so we're focusing on those. We've not specifically picked them out yet, but we are focusing on lands within those boxes as being the best for putting water into the ground. And so the answer to your question is somewhere between 2 and 24 inches a day will go into the ground. How fast it gets deep, again, depends on the soils, depends on the sands, depends on the clay layers, but main thing is it's moving that direction. That's all good.
We have a couple more questions online related to the rebate program, telemetry meters. And I want to say for the sake of time, we have just launched a web page that some of you may have gone to already if you received the rebate program packet. We were waiting to put it publicly on the website because we wanted those who registered their wells with MAGSA to be able to access that information first. But now anybody can go to www.mcmullinarea.org/rebate. And that's where we're going to continue to update all information related to telemetry, meters, Sigma water analytics, contact information, forms you may need. It will all live there. We've already developed an FAQ list. So if you have some questions that develop after this event, maybe they've already been answered on this page. So again, it's at our website /rebate. And we will, of course, send this out to our interested party email list. But I hope to our anonymous attendee online, I hope you can go there and find the information you're looking for.
How deep is the storage area down there? Do I have to deepen my well?
How deep is your well? Well, you might, but I'm hoping not. Our target is to bring it back up to 50 feet, I think, on our calculation. That would be nice, right? To pump from 50 feet instead of 200 feet or below. The minimum thresholds in different areas in the GSA are slightly different. But what we've done, part of our well construction requirements, if you want any type of mitigation going forward, you need to dig your well deeper than our minimum thresholds, which at this point, we're recommending 300 feet as a minimum depth for drilling any new wells. That will get you well below the minimum thresholds and well below any particular critical area that we're trying to take care of in Sigma.
We have another question.
Another question.
Do we know how much actually went by the bypass? I know we diverted some here on the McMullin project, but there was a lot of floodwater that wasn't being able to be captured.
Millions of acre feet. Not just in the bypass and the San Joaquin River, all the way out. If you've spent any time during a winter time, especially this last winter, up in the central part of California, up sort of toward Modesto, if you go across 132, you'll get to a certain point where the San Joaquin River is running that you won't see dry land again for about 6 miles. It's 6 miles wide and it's moving north. Going out through the Golden Gate, I can't tell you what the final number was, but it was north of 60 million acre feet of water went to the Golden Gate that wasn't used by us. That's the premise upon which we've made all of our water rights applications and everything else, is that we can't take enough water off of these flooding water courses to even put a dent in anybody's downstream rights or adversely affect the environment or anything else. But what we can do is be logical about this and pull enough water off of there to really start to reverse the trends that we've set up in groundwater and put that water back in the ground. Governor agreed with us. He had an executive order this year. It's been turned into a Senate bill that got turned into a water code 1242.1. So at least from now until January 2029, we will be able to continue to do what we did this year, which is take enough water, as much water as we can take off of whatever flooded water course there is to put water in the ground and to help on flood control downstream. Mainly, our main concerns for us are City of Mendota, City of Faribault, the southern levee district, and of course, all the way up to Newman. The city of Newman, which is pretty far north, came within 2 inches or 3 inches of breaching all of the levees they have protecting their water treatment plant there. And so it would have been much uglier this year had that happened. This year really proved to be take it as close as you can without going too far, because even in the lake bottom, everywhere else, if it had gone a little bit more and we had a little bit melt, that would have come a little bit faster, there could have been a huge doubling down on damage. We did okay. We dodged the bullet. I call it your warning. Plan for droughts during floods and plan for floods during droughts, folks. That's what we're trying to do here with McMullin. Get ahead of that. So next time there won't be a, shoot, we should have done something. Well, we're going to do something next time. That's what we're doing.
How much surface water are you buying? What price? And how are you distributing this water?
Well, if I could buy it and distribute it, I would. The missing element has always been from McMullin is we have no canals. I think in McMullin, prior to Don Cameron building his Terranova project, the only active canal we had within McMullin was on James Road, and that was part of the Gilmore Ranch historically. That was used sort of in the Mid-Valley area. So I said this to Bill Stretch one day at FID when I first came aboard here. He asked me, "We got water, you want to buy it?" I said, "What do you want me to do? Send tanker trucks and you can fill them up and bring them to us?" We can't do it. And so what we're doing is ultimately going to have conveyance that we can use to buy water, and then we'll buy water at whatever the price happens to be at the time if we can afford it. But we did have a study done. There's some people in Sacramento, ERA Economics, that was part of our water marketing plan. They indicated that they've done work for folks that indicated in 2035 they expect the value of water generally, doesn't matter where it came from, to be over $800 an acre foot. So we need to do everything we can to mitigate that possibility and get that storage in the ground in terms of savings as early as possible.
Does MAGSA have any connections with any power utilities or maybe internet optic cables that could help you with the conveyance routes? If they fall under public utility, it changes the right of way.
There are no public right of ways within McMullin currently. that we can utilize. And so, what we're doing, Crystal and I and Lynn went out even this week and we met with my landowner. We've been weekly going with our landowners, asking them for permission to show them what we're thinking, and showing them what impact it may have on their lands to put those canals on there. And to this moment, I can tell you, we've had nobody that said anything other than how fast can we get this done. Very, very cooperative group of landowners. Don, we have the good fortune of some of the best landowners you could have. We had a 218 election in 2018 that had 2 no votes, and a 218 election just last year that had 0 no votes. And so these people are ready and willing and able to get this thing done and to make sure there's enough money in the till to get it done. Best group I could possibly ask to work.
Are you planning on lined or unlined canals?
Don, lined canals. Unlined canals put water in the ground. Lined canals move water from point A to point B without going in the ground. It comes into McMullin, it's going into unlined.
We'll take one last question online from Tom. He asks, will Aquaterra store above the porphyry clay, below, or both? How does this work?
Oh heavens, no, below the corcoran clay is our savior at this point. The corcoran clay is wells, let's put it this way, wells being put below the corcoran clay, accessing confined aquifer waters below the corcoran clay are the single most responsible move that anybody could make to cause subsidence. And the reason we have subsidence is that water quality sometimes in areas of the state is not great in the unconfined. What McMullin has is the best water above the clay, and water is not necessarily the same below the clay. But on top of that, the answer to the question is we're going to store it above the clay, and we're going to utilize above the clay area and unconfined for a water bank. We don't intend to take any pressures from below the clay because we want that clay layer to stay exactly where it is and to keep our surface right where it is and no subsidence. Because I said before, subsidence is probably the single worst threat under Sigma that you could have. And so, again, going back to our regulations, just for everybody's information here, the board enacted a temporary moratorium on going through the clay back in 2022. It's quick becoming evident that that's going to need to be a permanent moratorium against it. I had a well application this morning that wanted to go to a depth of 560 feet where we believe the corcoran clay is at 500. I wrote them back, hopefully a very cordial letter that said, please amend your application to no deeper than 500 feet. That way we'll maintain ourselves in a good position. We won't do anything to further subsidence. And so far, all the drillers who've gotten that letter from me have amended their applications, and all the well drilling that's gone on here for at least the last year and a half has been above the clay. And it's the plan is that the only depth we're going to go to is clay. So the question is there any evidence that subsidence can be reversed? There's some on what we call elastic subsidence in some of the clays, not the corcoran clay, unfortunately, but in some clays, we have some clays actually up by the San Joaquin River that are closer to the surface that probably have some capability to move a little bit. But by and large, clays are generally inelastic, and once they're squeezed, it's like a sponge. You put that sponge on your sink and you put a weight on top of it. What's the chances you put water into that sponge and lift it up that way? It's not going to happen. So we have to stop the subsidence now, and there really is zero tolerance at the state level. We stop it now. In the Mendota subbasin, which is directly west of us, they've already adopted zero tolerance on subsidence. That really, really adversely affects anybody who tries to do it. That it? We done for now? Crystal's already told you, and of course, this genius right here in social media, we are available, we are accessible. You have a question, there's no such thing as a dumb question. You ask it, you call us, you come by and see us. We'll be happy to spend time with you. As you can tell, I'm a little shy, so is Crystal, so is Lynn. We'll be happy to tell you what we know. We've given a great deal of thought about this topic, and we continue to come up with new ideas every single day to make it better. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming, and we hope we've made it worth your while today.